So, hello everyone. We're just getting ready. Give me a hello in the chat, in the comments, in Facebook, if you are live and listening. We'll be starting in about 2 minutes time. So just say hello. I'm just waiting for a few more people to come along. So we'll be getting started very shortly. Really looking forward to talking to you all this evening. So we've got a few people on, which is great. Great to see you all. Hi, guys. And today I've got Polly joining me. Polly is one of the teachers who will be joining us all in week 3. And she's going to be talking about success, but I am bringing her on for the start of tonight's show because I think that there's some really important conversation to be had around, before we look at our values, why are we looking at them and why does it even matter? So she's going to be joining us for a little bit of a chat over that in a few moments. And so it's 6 o'clock. We'll get started. Hopefully a few more people will join as we go along. If you have any questions at all during tonight's lesson, please feel free to comment in the comment section at any time. I might not answer them straight away because there's a little bit of a time lag between me recording and what you will see on Facebook. I think it's about a minute behind. So we'll be managing that, but all the questions, we will be keeping a note of them and we'll come back to them at the end of the lesson. So a massive welcome to lesson 1, to the work experience. This has been a project that's come together with the support of 8 amazing women. And our intention with it was to really help women reframe how they look at work. And the reason for that is so many people right now are thinking about how they might want to change their work life, whether that's running a business, whether that's in a job, or maybe life circumstances are making them think that they might need to make those kind of changes as well. So what have I got on my list? We've got welcome. I am so excited to explore this topic with you. Values is a massive passion for me because there was a time when I was stuck in a 9-to-5 job that really didn't fit me, and I didn't know what I wanted to do instead, and that really kept me paralyzed. And even though I had some ideas that maybe I wanted to work for myself, maybe I wanted to make a difference and do something meaningful, finding the start point for that took me a very, very long time. And the golden thread, the major thing that gave me a breakthrough, was discovering my values. And that's why we're going to start with it today, because values are like a checklist or a specification for what you want to be creating in your life. And so often when we're unhappy in our current circumstances, it's a very big signal that our values are, maybe we're not behaving in alignment with those values, or maybe we're not always speaking up in the way that we should, that really represents what we feel is important and what's of value to you. So the other big announcement that I've got is I am running a competition. So this event, it's totally free. We're also raising money for charity. I know lots of you will want to watch the videos, watch the lessons, see what the quality is like. So that's totally cool. And if you find that some of it really resonates, that would be super useful to you, do have a look at the upgrade packages. It's not a hard sell. It's just, we would love to raise some money for a women's charity, and you will get to choose the charity in the very last week as well. So we'll be taking nominations for women's charities that we could support. So if and when lots of money is raised, we can choose who to send it to. So 100% of profits will go to that charity. The competition I mentioned is that one lucky person is going to win a 6-week one-to-one coaching program with me. So throughout these sessions, all of the teachers will be offering prizes, maybe from themselves, maybe from some of the other teachers. We have books to give away, we have programs to give away. And all of these things are not just things that we give away for free normally. They're things that are really high value, really can make an impact if you're ready and open to doing the work and to working with those tools and those freebies. So if you would like to win the one-to-one coaching with me, then I am looking for the most generous person in this group. I'm looking for someone that shows up on the lives, that comments, that participates. And I have a really big request now. I want all of you to start a watch party on your timeline. And this, yes, I'll be honest, is a little bit about helping us promote this group. But also it's because the stuff that we're going to be talking about is so valuable and can help so many people, that you might just have a friend who, or an acquaintance on your Facebook who, is going through a hard time right now, and this information and these lessons and these tools could really, really help them. And so don't start it inside this group, start the watch party on your own timeline. We'd be super grateful for everyone that does that. And we will be watching throughout the 8 weeks for someone who really stands out as really sharing this group, really participating, really seems to be getting a lot from it. So give us a thumbs up in the comments right now if you'd be interested in winning that. You can give us a thumbs up whether you are watching live right now or whether you are watching the replay on this, because I know some people are not necessarily going to be able to be here every single week at 6 o'clock every Monday. I know some people work shifts. I know some people it's not a great time. So you'll still be eligible even if you're not live, but we are looking for the participation and the generous spirit. Okay, so that is all of the housekeeping out of the way, I think. So I'm going to bring Polly into the conversation just now, and we're going to have a little conversation around, hi Polly.
Oh yeah.
So when I was really looking to escape my cubicle, shall we say, I was really seeking to make a difference. And one thing that I noticed with clients and friends even is people say all the time, oh, I want to make a difference. And then I say, okay, well, how do you want to make a difference? What does that mean for you? What does that look like? And for me, I had to go through a process of realizing that I wanted to be working in a business that had a different vibe, a different energy, a different process and way of working. And I know that a lot of people will resonate with that feeling. And I came to realize that our individual choices hold so much power. How many times do we go to work, whether in your own business or in someone else's business, and do you think, like, oh, I don't quite feel comfortable with this decision or with the actions that I'm taking. And this is a clear sign of we're going against our own personal values. And so I know that, Polly, you talk a lot about this because you work with women and people who are starting businesses and want to express their essence and their soul in what they do and make that difference. So what's your experience with that?
Oh man. Well, I mean, my own journey is like, I think the biggest thing about that is, and you, I think people may come up against this, is learning to value your own values.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that sounds like tautology, but we're told so much about what we should think that it sort of drowns out what we do think or what we do want or what we do feel or what we do value. And so there's that, as you said it, there's that niggling undertone that's going on in our lives, but we learn to squash it. So I think, learning to hear it, learning to listen to it, learning to give it voice is like one of the most important things. So, I mean, I'm like you, I just, I wanted to find that. I stumbled into, with my career, I stumbled into stuff. It was just what the doors that open. Now, they were fortuitous doors, but they were to some extent doors that opened for me. So I was put into situations where they either did follow with my values, or all of a sudden I felt that they really didn't. And as you said, that creates an almost toxic atmosphere then that you have to exist within. And so that, I mean, I think that was preparation for the work that I do in actually encouraging people to truly value who they are and what they value in themselves as an expression in the world. We think that we're just one of us, and therefore what we do isn't relevant, or not that it's not relevant, but it's not going to really create an impact. But what I've learned and has come forward again and again and again, more and more powerfully, is that the solution to all the world's problems is being true to yourself. And the more true you are to yourself, the more you will change the world.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think, so my first career out of university was as an engineer. And over the years, I began to realize that the rhetoric of policy, of government, of industry is technology will solve sustainability. Technology will solve all of the issues that we have. And the reality I found in that job was that technology wasn't going to solve it because people were too busy blocking the right solutions from happening on the basis of money, on the basis of economic man, if you want to be philosophical about it. And this is the idea that money rules our motivation for work. It rules our motivation for any form of work, action, and that sort of thing. Raise your hands in the Facebook group just now. We can't watch it live, but we'll take a look at it afterwards. Just let us know if anyone resonates with this. So what I realized was that our individual choices, when you're in a meeting in work, when you're choosing which clients to work with or which business partners to work with, those decisions have a massive ripple effect. Those decisions can be the difference between whether a difference is made and what difference is made in the world. And this, I began to realize it in my career, but it actually went out into other areas of my life in terms of where I started to shop, what I started to eat. Has it been the same for you, Polly?
It has, yeah. I have to say, it's one of those things. Once you take that first decision to be true to your choices, the choices that feel good to you, you can't. It's like a snowball. You can't stop it. It starts to impact on every aspect of your life in a positive way. I mean, all change is a little bit, well, it's destabilizing, but it's all can also be scary. But yeah, it's definitely once you said, okay, actually, you know what, I'm important enough, this is important enough, I'm going to do something about it, I'm going to make a conscious choice to live in a particular way or take a decision that has a particular impact. Yeah, then you will then you find your voice. And if you're somebody who hasn't felt that they've had a voice, then that is the most powerful thing that you can do to give yourself a voice.
Yeah, really great point. I think a lot of us, we squash our voices even in various aspects of work, particularly if you're in a corporate world, I think. And I think the point you made earlier about behavior is really important. So often we have a sense of our values and we know something is off, but our behaviors don't necessarily align with what we value and what we want to create in the world and what we want to see happening, the social change or whatever kind of change that you want to see, both personally and for others as well. So that's one of the topics that I'm going to be talking about in tonight's session. So I'm going to switch back over to my view, Polly, and bring up my lesson for the evening. Thank you so much for your input there. It was brilliant.
My pleasure.
Any final thoughts?
No, I'm looking forward to what you're going to be talking about. Really looking forward to that.
And do you know your values? I'm putting you on the spot now.
No, I do. I mean, I have learnt to be very clear about my values, but what you're going to be talking about, I think, is going to make people think about it in a different way. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's switch over. Coming back to the main view, and I'm just going to share my screen with you all. Polly, give me a little heads up in the chat box and just let me know that this is being seen. Oh, I've lost my chat box. I'm going to assume that it is, and we'll get started. Okay, so what is the most important thing that you can have? I'm just going to come back to the start because I don't know why this has disappeared. So we're going to be talking about values today. And as we've already talked about, values are super important in terms of making sure that we behave in alignment with the change that we want to create for ourselves or create out in the world. And so I'm going to be talking to you today about 3 things. If you leave from this lesson with a clearer idea of why your values matter, how they affect your motivation and your decisions, and you won't necessarily know what your values are by the end of this particular lesson, but you will once you've done the activation exercise, which is in the worksheets. For anyone that hasn't found that, there is a section in the Facebook group somewhere over to the right-hand side that has a little title saying activation exercise, and you can find the worksheet in there. If you haven't got it already, don't worry, just grab a pen and a piece of paper because you are going to need it. So what I want you to do is actually record some of your thinking, some of your reflections as you go throughout this process, but also as you go throughout all of the lessons in all 8 weeks. So drop me a comment in the Facebook group and tell me what in life is important to you. Just give the first thing that comes to the top of your head: family, love, money, relationships, a home, work, something else perhaps. Okay, the reason I'm asking you to type this in the comments is because I want to see if it falls into any of the categories that I am going to talk about in a few moments, of things that we think are the most important to us, but actually might not be. And how do you know that that thing is important to you? What is it that tells you? Is it a feeling? Is it a thought? Is it a sensation in your body? Maybe something else. Again, either write this down for yourself or pop it in the comments in the Facebook group. All of these comments will get read, and Polly is going to be feeding back to me at the end some of this stuff. And do you think that your behavior always matches what you value and what you think is important? Sometimes it's really difficult to make choices, and sometimes decisions might be ethically challenging, we might be torn between two different things. And I'm going to talk a little bit in a few moments about why that happens, what that struggle is all about. So as we go through this, feel free to ask questions in the comments, and we'll capture them and come back to them at the end. So what is the most important thing that you can have in life? One thing that a lot of people say is money. They think, I need money in order to start my business. I need money in order to make things happen. And I would say money is definitely important. It's certainly better to have money than not to have money. And the more money you have, the more opportunities and things that you have available to you. And that's definitely true. However, if you go and speak to a selection of rich people, very, very rich people, many of them are unhappy, and they will tell you. There's a great speech by Jim Carrey, and he talks about this, and he says, I wish everyone could have all their dreams come true and become super rich, because then they'd realize what's really important. You know, and you only have to look at lottery winners, for example. That most of them, in all of the profiling of them, what it has shown is that most people who win the lottery become less happy, not more happy. So maybe money is important, but it may not be the most important thing that you can have. The next thing that a lot of people say is love or relationships. And again, you know, I can't imagine living without love in my life. It's something I treasure. It's something that is just so incredibly vital to my life. But the thing is, if you don't have good values, then you're not necessarily going to receive that much love, or there might be things in the way that prevent people from seeing you the way that you want to be seen. So happiness is important, but again, it may not be the most important thing. Happiness is another thing that many people think of as being important. Many people strive to be happy or to feel free. And again, nobody wants to be not happy. Nobody wants to feel that struggle. But again, without values, I really believe that there'd be not a lot of happiness in the world. And I'm going to go on to talk about why that is. So a value is something that you think is more important than anything else. Okay, this is just one definition. There's a lot of different definitions out there. Some people talk about it as being an expression of the soul. Some people talk about values as being the manifestation of our internal world. But this is the simplest answer. A value is something that you think is more important than anything else. And values are what you consider to be more important than your feelings as well. And this might come as a shock. And I'm not saying here that feelings don't matter. That is not what I'm saying here. But what I am saying is generally something that you value is more important than your feelings. And I'll give you an example of this to help. So most of us would happily eat junk food every single day if we just followed what we feel like all the time. Give me a hands up in the group if you like a bit of junk food from time to time. Yeah, most of us, right? So yeah, chocolate is my favorite as well. What stops us from just eating junk food all the time is a value. And that value is usually something connected to being healthy. Like we know that we love the taste of fries, if you're me, and that if I ate those all the time, I would put on weight, my health would suffer, my body might end up being physically in pain if I became obese or had other health issues like diabetes. And it's the value of being healthy that triggers this response to actually eat a bit healthier, not just indulge all of the time. I'm not saying never indulge, because obviously all things in balance, that's my motto, but it's the value that creates that difference. It's the value that stops you from just following what you feel like all the time. You know, sometimes you feel like watching Netflix till 2 a.m. and finishing that show, but you know you've got to get up the next day, and so you switch it off because you value being on time for work. You value showing up and being alert and being able to make a difference. So there's this constant challenge or battle between our values and our feelings, and this can often lead to some very interesting decisions. I'm going to give you just another example of how this challenge occurs. So this is Scoop. I wish he was my dog because he's super cute. Imagine that you went to, if you're a dog lover, imagine you went to the beach for the day and your dog ran off into the sea and was drowning. Okay, and your first instinct is, oh my gosh, I love Scoop so much, I'm going to run in and save him. And as you're heading in, you look over to the right and you realize there's a human drowning as well. And you have to make a choice. Are you going to save your dog, who you feel you love, or are you going to choose to save the human? Now, different people will make different choices, I'm sure. But if you value human life, then you will most likely save the human first. Okay, and it's a value that drives that decision. You may choose that, you know what, I'm not that fussed on humans. Fair enough. Some people aren't that nice. And actually, I'm going to save Scoop first. I won't judge you for it at all. That's your value, though. It's still a value that's speaking, and that value is driving what your ultimate decision is, far more than what your feeling is. You might feel that you love your dog, but the value is what will ultimately be the decision maker. So this is why values are really helpful in helping us to make difficult decisions. And almost everything that's wrong with the world, in my opinion, comes from people either not having values or not knowing their values or not living by their values. So that means not behaving in alignment with what they feel is really important to them. Can you imagine how different the world would be if every single person did what they really truly felt and thought was of value to the world in every decision that they made every single day? I think we'd have some really, really different results, right? So knowing your values makes decisions easier. Anyone who is a client of mine that's on this, tell me if this is true. Type it in the comment box. Tell me, how did knowing your values make your decision making process different, easier? Hopefully you won't say worse, but I know you will, and I don't think it was. So I'd like you, if you haven't already got it, to bring up your worksheet, the activation exercise. And I'd like you to just take a moment and reflect on what I've just talked about with values. And in your own words, just write down, what does the concept of values mean to you? You can write this down on a piece of paper if you don't have the worksheet, or you can just sit and think about it if you're not able to do that. But just in your own mind, what do values mean to you? And also, how well do you know your values right now? If you have the worksheet, I'd like you to just circle one of the numbers. So 10 is, you could tell me exactly what your top values are right now, and you could describe them in some depth, and you could describe how you apply them. 1 is, I've never even thought about values, and this is totally new to me. And everyone else, somewhere in between. Okay, so whatever you put as your number, if you're feeling brave, type it in the comments. Let us know, because we'd love to know how you feel before this lesson and then after this lesson as well. So on Thursday night, we are going to be doing a homework catch-up session. So we'll be looking at how you've got on with the exercise that I'm going to talk you through in a minute, and you will have the opportunity to post questions to me in advance, and I will be spending, since it's the first one, I'm going to spend as long as it takes answering every single one of your questions around this exercise, because values are quite deep in terms of we're really getting into the core of who we are. And if this is the first time you've ever started to think about or look at values, then it can sometimes feel a little bit confusing or not quite clear, and there might be some questions that you have after doing the exercise in order to help you get some clarity. But hopefully some of the examples that I've got are going to guide you through that process. So we're going to do the start of the exercise together now so that you can get a feel for how it works. So the first thing I'd like you to do is describe a major frustration at work. So things clients have said to me in the past, if someone was in employment, they've said, my boss doesn't listen to my ideas. I've been there. Someone who is working for themselves might say, I need more clients. And other people who are knowing they need to make a career change, but they don't necessarily know what to, might say something like, I don't know what I want. I know I need to change, but I don't know what to. So what's your one major frustration at work? Again, drop it in the comments. The more you share in this group, the more you are going to get out of it, because it helps us get to know you. It helps us to respond to you with more tailored advice, because this is your opportunity to get the most out of both me. I'll be joining you every single week as the host in this process, but also all of the other teachers that are to come. We're all here to help answer your questions throughout the process. So you choose your frustration, and then the next step, step number 2, is I'd like you to now think about that frustration and ask yourself, what would you ideally like to feel instead? And this word feel is very, very important, because I want you to really focus on how you want to feel, because it's our feelings that sometimes help us tap into our values. And we have to be clear on both the situation, the frustration, the feelings around it, and then we can come to the values. So typically, again, someone in employment who said their boss wasn't listening to them, wasn't hearing them, might say, I get to make a difference with my skills. That's what I'd really like to feel. Or they might say, I'd like my boss to hear me. But the challenge with that is that's not something that that person can control. And so when you write down what you would ideally like to feel, I'd like you to just review it with a thought to, can I actually control that? Is that something that's within my sphere of influence? And if it's not, just cross it out and start again and think about, what is it that you would like to feel that is within your control? Okay, someone who is in business and perhaps looking for more clients might say, I'd like to feel that I have a secure income. Or if you're making a career change and you don't know what you want to do, you might say, I want to feel satisfied by my choices. These are just examples. You come up with your own. Again, feel free to share those in the comments. It's great for us to be able to see the link. And another point on this, a question that I always get is, oh, but you know, I know what I'd really like, but that'll never happen. For the purpose of this exercise, I'd like you to let yourself be free, totally free from the constraints of reality, because we're trying to get through to what's actually important to you. And if you place those barriers too early, we're not going to be able to dig deep enough. So go for the ideal. Even if that's not a reality that feels possible right now, still write down, what it is that you long for, what you long to be experiencing instead. And then once you've done that second step, we move to the third step, which is so often when we are frustrated in our work, in our business, with our situation, it's because there is a value that is being ignored or trodden on or not honored. And so as you look at this frustration and your ideal sense of what you would want instead, what you would like to be experiencing instead, I'd like you to now question what value is being ignored or not honored in that situation that gives you that frustration. So for example, the first example of someone who's in a work, in an employment with a boss that doesn't listen to them, who then craves to feel that they make a difference in work, they might say that the value that is being overridden is the value of being of service. They really want to be of service and they feel that they're not able to be because their boss isn't listening to them. For someone who is in a business and longing to have more clients because they want to have a stable income, that might be a value around self-care or independence or financial stability. And then again, for somebody who is making a career change, who doesn't know what they want and who wants to get to a point of clarity, they might choose the value as healthy boundaries. Perhaps they're not holding the boundaries that help them to honor who they are and what they want and being true to themselves. Okay, so I know that it will seem really hard to figure out what the value is straight away. And this isn't something you can do in 5 minutes. It's going to take a little bit of reflection and potentially thinking it through with somebody else. Do feel free to post your questions into the Facebook group, either today or in the week as you go through this process more, because what I'm going to ask you to do throughout this week is finish off the worksheet. I'm going to ask you to list down every single frustration that you have. And I mean every single frustration. Get it all out of your system now, because every single one of those is an area that could potentially reveal a value to you. What a lot of career coaches and life coaches do is they give you a random set of words and they'll say to you, oh, pick the ones that feel best to you. And I find for me that never worked, because I never felt particularly drawn to the language or to the words that were given. And I just felt like I just couldn't connect with it in a way. And when I work with my clients, they definitely seem to connect much better with their values when they start with their frustrations and the feelings that they'd prefer to be experiencing as the access point, as the gateway to figuring out their values. And most of my clients, what they will do is they'll write down a value for every single one of the frustrations and feelings that they've got. And then what I say to them is, now see if you can group those up. Which ones are quite similar? And is there a word that can, or a phrase that can describe that particular value? So you're not going to get this on the first pass. So just put down what comes through to you right now in terms of the value that you're potentially not honoring. And don't worry if it's imperfect. Don't worry if you don't feel sure about it. It often takes quite a while after you've done your values work for it to really sink in and feel true to you. And I thought what might help is an example. So this is a real life example from one of my clients. So she said that she was frustrated, and this is just about half of their list because I couldn't fit it all on, and I wanted to try and make sure you could all see. If you're in the Facebook group, You can expand into a full screen and you'll be able to read this much better. So her frustrations were, it's not a permanent job. My boss is not a good manager. I'm bored out of my mind. My skills are not being utilized. I don't make equivalent compensation. There's no interaction with my peers. My manager doesn't see me as an asset. I have to work hours that I can't control. There's no room for growth. The level of my job tasks is lower than I want. I feel invisible and I have no self-determination in it. That's a pretty nasty, not nice situation to find yourself in. But how many of us can resonate with feelings like that? Perhaps if you work for yourself now, maybe you can resonate from when you were working in a job. But even I found in working for myself and starting my own businesses, there are still things like this, you know. There's still times when you work hours you don't necessarily want to in order to fit in with clients potentially. Or there's still times where, you know, maybe you feel like you don't get enough interaction with other people because you work solo, and maybe you need to, there's a value there that's being not honored. So in this case study, my client said the ideal feelings that she would like to have would be to have security over her income, to express her concerns and frustrations and be heard and seen, to feel actively engaged and making a difference in her work, be energized about what she can accomplish and make happen, feel valued in practical terms because she wasn't being paid equivalent compensation. She wanted to feel energized by the conversations and the idea sharing with her colleagues, to feel like she could be relied upon to get things done, and to have a little bit more flexibility over her time, to feel that this would lead to something, that she wasn't just going in to get a paycheck every day, but it had some deeper meaning to it, and to feel challenged, that she made a difference, and that she felt embodied to make decisions. Now, she started off and she created a long list of values for all of these points. And when we then regrouped them, she came up with 4 core values that really, really were important to her at this time in her life, which were self-care, clarity, healthy boundaries, and self-fidelity, which means being true to yourself. And she found that as she came up with these words, she was able to put almost every single one of those frustrations and feelings into one of these categories. And she didn't get it on the first pass. I think it took maybe 2 or 3 attempts to get there, and that's very normal. But what you can see here is a clear link between, you know, it's not a permanent job, linked with having healthy boundaries. She really needed to work on, you know, what was she prepared to accept in her life? Was her behavior in alignment with how she really wanted to feel? Was she holding healthy boundaries so that she could have security over her income? You know, was she having self-care so that she could, or being true to herself so that she could express her concerns and frustrations in work? Now, I know for everyone that may not be totally possible. Sometimes you can't actually express stuff because there will be very real consequences, but it still highlights what your value is, and in an ideal situation, what you would like. And what you have to learn to do is to align your behaviors with these values that you come up with. So in the activation exercise, in the worksheet that you have, over the next few days, I would like you to spend maybe 20 minutes, maybe a bit more if you feel that you want to do that, to go through the worksheet and to come up with your personal values list. And that'll be a list of somewhere between 4 and 8 values of things that are really super important to you. And then on Thursday, you can post your questions in advance. I'll probably put the thread up on Wednesday to give you a little bit more time to ask them to me. And I will be answering all of your questions live. So really think carefully about your questions. Try to make them succinct. Try to be as clear as possible and provide any background information that I might need just underneath. And I'll be reading all of these throughout the day on Thursday in preparation for the review session. So that's at 6 o'clock UK time, 1 p.m. US time still, in order to really dig deep, because I know many of you are going to have questions and you're going to say, is that my value? And this is what I was thinking, or could you give me your thoughts on this? All of those types of questions are absolutely perfect, and I would love to hear them. So, a final thought, just coming away from your personal values and how you can figure those out, is how do values affect your motivation? So for me, what I found is that when I act out of alignment with my values, when I get that icky feeling of, oh, this is not something I want to be doing, but I have to, or I've chosen to for whatever reason, but it goes against my values, generally it leads to a massive amount of what's the opposite? Of a lack of motivation, a massive lack of motivation. And it can be really hard to stay focused when you have to go and do things every single day that just don't align with who you are and what you want to be creating in the world. And equally, when I act in alignment with my values, it feels much better, things flow. I actually feel excited to get up in the morning when I know that I'm going to be living my values or doing that. And it doesn't mean that everything is always easy or goes well or goes perfectly. But what it does mean is that even when things are hard, I'm so focused on what matters to me that it's worth the pain, it's worth the effort, it's worth the time or the sacrifice, or just the energy. It doesn't necessarily have to be a negative. Often it's not. And so my values, I thought it would be good to share. These are mine. Be of service. So this came about because I was really frustrated that I felt like the things that I was doing weren't really connected with people. So this is when I was an engineer. I was thinking, you know, I'd really like to feel like I'm making a difference. And for me, being of service is about ensuring that anything that I do, any work I do, any activities I engage in, that they serve both myself and a broader community. And that might be a local community, it might be a particular group, it could be society at large, or a nation even could fall into that. But it's the general idea of when you really focus on how you can help and how you uniquely are designed to help in a certain way. That's what being of service means to me. It's also to have fun. I was in a job where I was not having any fun. And I mean, the conversations that blokes of a certain age have just didn't interest me. And you know, working in a job or in a business that isn't suiting you can really drain your energy if you're not doing things that restore it. So this having fun for me was about something that really restored my energy. I wanted to be around people I could have a laugh with, people who inspired me, people who were doing cool things, you know, really simple. Another value of mine is connect. I love connecting with people. I love deep conversations. I love being in groups. And so I think it's really important to make sure that I'm connected with people and that my work is directly connected with the outcome for other people. I don't want to be, you know, the results will come in the form of statistics 2 years down the line. That's not me. I'm like, I want this connection. I want to see how my efforts go into really improving a person's life. Growth is another one of my values. Personal development, having that growth mindset is so important for me. Everyone I connect with, I like them to be on that same path. It's really difficult to maintain relationships when other people aren't open to growing, aren't open to seeing themselves necessarily, or maybe avoid deeper conversations. And then finally, my biggest value, even though I've put it last, is restore balance. And what this means to me is, one of my big values is around finding balance between our material needs and our spiritual needs. So my challenge in my career was that I was really, really focused on the material needs. There's actually a lot of statistics to show that if you come from a background which has had poverty or any kind of chaos, such as alcoholism, mental health in the family, anything like that, then you're more likely to focus on earning money than enjoyment of the job. This was a stat that totally intrigued me, because I felt like I was this statistic. And I really longed, when I achieved all my dreams, I'd like planned to be an engineer. I thought, I'll have this safe salary, I'll have the status, I'll be in this great job. And I realized I really wasn't happy. And I had to restore the balance with figuring out, I say the spiritual side, but it's the sense of satisfaction, the thing that makes me feel alive and great, and that I'm doing something powerful every single day. And that doesn't mean that I necessarily had everything figured out, but by knowing my values, it was like having a compass that gave me direction for where I wanted to go. And so our values generally might change from the first time you do your values to a few years later or a few months later, because what we generally have is we have a set of deficits of things that we're not doing for ourselves, that we have to get right before we can get deeper into our core values. So this exercise is to help you know your deficit values, but if you've already done some work before, it's also a great tool for helping you figure out your core values as well. Okay, so that is the end of tonight's lesson, and I'm going to bring Polly back up in a minute. Let me see if I can stop sharing and bring us back onto gallery view. And I'm going to get her to just give me any feedback that there's been in the group throughout tonight's session, and to hear a little bit about your thoughts on this, how you found that lesson. Was there anything that was particularly interesting for you, that stood out as an aha moment potentially, or anything that just maybe doesn't feel 100% clear to you that you'd like to get a little bit more clarity on? So Polly, let me know if you have any questions for me. Okay, she's just joining us back. She'd come off the chat for some reason. So while she's just joining, I'm going to take an opportunity for a minute just to remind you that I really hope you have enjoyed this lesson. All of us are totally here to support you in all of the work that you're doing. So often when you begin to reflect on who you are and what you want in life and what really matters to you, we get a lot of questions that arise. Sometimes we feel a bit wobbly as well. And so if at any point you feel overwhelmed, or you feel, hi Polly, or you feel that you have questions, you can always drop me a line. My email is holly@evolving.careers. You can also reach out to me, DM me in this group, or put your comments in the group as well. So Polly, it would be great to get some questions from the group. If I bring you into the view and unmute you, is that okay? Let's have a look. Hey, Polly.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Zoom crashed me out altogether.
I saw, don't worry.
So yes, there's some comments coming through now. So it was interesting that at the beginning, one of the things people reflecting about the frustrations that they have, none of them I think would be particularly surprising to any of us. So there's feeling insecure about what we offer. That's something I think we all know as entrepreneurs is a challenge. It's having the confidence to offer that. People undervaluing. Now that can be in a work and career situation, or that can be in a if it's your own business. And also sometimes the time it takes to make some of those transitions. Those were big, those were the things that were people reflecting on in terms of their frustrations.
So I'll just pick up on those for a minute. I think if you have started to work for yourself, I can't remember if it was you that I spoke to this about earlier in the week, Polly, but I was talking to somebody and they said, there's no, if you start a business, it's a surefire way to come up against yourself and your own lack of self-worth, lack of self-confidence. Every issue that you have within you, any gaps in your knowledge base, for example, or in your power base, are going to show up in this business. I mean, for me, it's taken me 7 years to get from having the idea for evolving careers to actually starting to work with clients over the past few years, and then eventually launching my website and starting this group. And I'm not saying it's that slow for everyone, but there's also, for those of you that are making career changes, for me, I set out my values and I also worked out what my limits were. So I prioritized my values and I said to myself, okay, I need to align more with myself, but I'm going to need a stepping stone here. I didn't have the financial backing to just say, hey, I'm going to chuck it all in and go start a business for myself, or I'm going to go take a year off and travel and find myself and figure it out. And I think as well, I would advise against doing that. I think it's really good to get out of your comfort zone of the people who typically influence you and get away, be on your own for a few days and really reflect on yourself if this is a big question for you about, what do you want to change to? But also think about maybe taking a stepping stone. Because for me, I was like, I didn't want to go back and retrain, but for the sort of things that, I was going from an engineer into something dealing with people. I knew that I wanted to maybe teach or coach. And I thought, well, if I'm not going to be able to go back and retrain, how am I going to get a job doing that? And so I decided to leverage my engineering background and said, hey, I'm going to see if I can teach something connected to sustainability and engineering. And luckily I found that. So don't think that taking a stepping stone, if you're looking to change careers or if you're looking to start a business, is a negative thing, because I know I certainly felt that pressure in myself. And actually, you can very much take just the next step. And one thing that I found is incredibly helpful in terms of my decision making is always to anchor it in the present moment of, okay, how do I feel right now? What do I need to provide for myself right now? And it's great to have a future vision, but if you're not providing for yourself in the present moment, that future vision is going to get undermined by a lot of practical realities of not having the money or the time or the space. And you've got to figure out a way that you're going to be able to create that. And you've got to figure out a way that you're going to be able to iterate. Nobody starts a business, for the most part, and becomes some overnight success. Even when we see overnight successes of businesses, especially if you've grown up in the era that I have of Facebook when you're at school and all these people suddenly becoming millionaires. But when you start to look into their stories, they've had failures before they've reached that point. They've had iterations and times when they thought it wasn't going to work. Even if you look at, the stereotypical names such as Richard Branson, for example, and people like that. Okay. So, Polly, you've just muted again, but I'm wondering, are there any more reflections? So that was frustrations. Totally feel that, totally understand where you're coming from with a lot of those frustrations. And we'll just see if we can get Polly back on for the last few minutes, because she has been my eyes and my ears in the Facebook group with the lag between me filming and it streaming live to you guys in Facebook. It's not possible for me to see what you're writing without me getting all confused and getting confused between screens. So hopefully she'll come back in the next few minutes. And if not, I hope you have enjoyed this, and I really hope that you will consider over the weeks whether you will invest in the recordings. There's also some other packages where you can get a coaching session with any of the teachers of your choice, and also with packages. So in the very top package, Polly has very kindly offered her program that is for developing your business and your soul expression in your business. And I've actually been starting to work my way through some of those programs just so that I can talk to you guys about what's in that, what it's like. And it's absolutely brilliant if you're starting a business. You can also, if you're not starting a business and you buy that top package, you can also choose to do a career change CV session with me, where I talk you through everything that you need to know about that. So any final questions, Polly, or thoughts? You'll have to unmute.
Yeah, I will have to unmute myself. Yeah. There's some really interesting comments that have come up that I think it's worth just sort of reflecting on before we finish. So I'm assuming it's Danny, said that I didn't realize I haven't been valuing my values, and it's good to concentrate on this. I think that's such an important comment. And Philly said it's really interesting to tap into values through where you're feeling unsatisfied and allowing the values to organically arise.
Say that one to me again.
So it's interesting to tap into values through where you're feeling unsatisfied and allow the values to organically arise.
Yeah, I that's what I like about this process. I actually developed this process for myself because I just felt it was really not me to select from a list. And I mean, there are lots of other resources to find your values. If you do a quick search online, there are tests, there are quizzes, there are lists, and that might actually work for some of you. So don't rule it out. But generally, most people have a far more powerful experience when it's tied to their frustrations, because it's really simple. If you're frustrated, you're doing something that's out of alignment with yourself, something that doesn't really represent who you are in the world. That's what creates frustration. There are some other things that create frustration as well, but in terms of work, that's generally the key. And I really am excited to find out what some of your values are. If anybody does have a clear idea of one of their values from this session, I know we've only looked at one, maybe drop it in the comments. And in the meantime, Polly, any other potent remarks or questions?
Sorry, I keep muting myself so it doesn't interfere with you. No, I think that sort of covers it. I get the distinct impression that people are going to want to really sit with this and allow it to percolate, because they're deep questions. So
they are deep questions.
Really good to see lots of comments during the week. You know, if people are sort of like, you don't feel that you have to wait till Thursday. If you want to put it under the thread, you know, just come back and keep talking, because I think it's really important to just vocalize it and express it the minute you feel it.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I think that rawness when it first comes out is really often very useful. And what a lot of people have a tendency to do is to then censor and make it more palatable. And you know, this group is a super safe space for you to explore all the quirky, weird, what other labels you might put on yourself, ideas and feelings and experiences that you have. I'd really invite you to share them in this group. I think the one thing that all the teachers know is that we have all been through experiences where we've felt that way, where, you know, we've looked at the world and we've seen the response we get from the world and been like, oh, I really see things quite different. And we have that self-doubt of like, is this really right? What I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I'm planning. Have you experienced that, Polly, as well?
Oh God, yeah. The self-doubt, it's going to come into play. It is always going to come into play, and it's going to interfere with the clarity that you have. But yeah, definitely, I have second guessed myself and blown things up many times.
I think it's really important to know that like we all go through that process and we're not alone with it. How have you dealt with that when it's happened for you, Polly? I'll share mine after you.
Okay, so how have I dealt with it? I've been really tough on myself in the past. I've learned to see it a little bit better now, but I've just sort of assumed that I was the problem underlying all of this. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I'm better now about sort of seeing where it's happening and just allowing that to allowing myself to be conscious of it so that I'm aware when it's happening again in the future. But I am normally pretty hard on myself. Think, I can't believe I've done that again.
Same. I think you touched on a really, really important point there. That is, we so often think it's us, or that we're wrong, or that we're the crazy one. And I think on my journey, the one thing that I've come to realize is the more I've got okay with realizing I have to accept my experience. So whether it's right or wrong, whether other people agree or disagree, the experience for me is whatever I feel, that is the experience for me. It's true for me. Doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's perfect, but that is my experience. And learning to validate that experience and say, okay, so that's what I'm feeling. And then the next step is, how do I experience that in my body? How does it show up for me? How do I act that out when I experience that? And then the last part is about choosing my path, choosing what do I want from a place of what can I actually control? Because one of the big things I think that we so often do is we long for things or for ideas or dreams or for particular events to happen that we don't actually have control of. How many people sit there in work and think, I just wish my boss was different? You're never going to be able to change your boss. What you can change is how you deal with her, how much time you allow yourself to spend with her, how you allow that person to speak to you, the boundaries that you hold. In business, I've had this with clients. So I'm a yoga teacher as well. I had, as people do yoga, sometimes they can have some quite strong reactions to what's going on for them, because it can flush out anger. It cleanses a lot of stuff that's in our systems, old patterns, old behaviors. And I've had really confrontational emails or calls from clients, and I've really had to hold my integrity and go, no, I think this is something going on for you, because you're telling me the music is awful and you hate this, but everybody else is happy, and you've got to hold that sense of integrity in yourself. And I think when you operate from a place of knowing your values, that is much easier to hold. Now, I'm not saying that's everything. I mean, one of the reasons that we have such a range of teachers in this 8 weeks is because some of those things happen because of trauma. Some of those things happen because we don't know what we want or what we're great at, because some of us grew up in households where maybe no one ever said to you, hey, what do you actually like? What do you enjoy? What do you get pleasure from? What feels good for you? If you haven't been asked that a lot in your life, and one area where we don't get asked that a lot is definitely in our work life. I mean, I remember going to the career service in university or in school and them giving me all these profiles to go and do, and realizing in later life, at no point did anyone say to me, Holly, what do you like? What do you enjoy? What are you good at? And the most important question, I think, with work is, what is meaningful to you? if you're going to make a difference, how do you want to make that difference? And starting with your values is often a great place to start that journey, because it's so personal, it's so close to you, it's so everyday for you. So I think that'll do, because we've gone slightly over time, and I hope it was worth it though. I feel like that final discussion held a few gems in it. Hopefully you will take something away from it. And next up, next week on Tuesday, we have a session with Jo Gifford, who is talking about your brilliance. So she's a digital creator, a blogger. She's been featured on all sorts of brilliant places. Check out her profile on the evolving.careers website on the work experience page. She's fabulous, and she's just brought out a book not so long ago about finding your brilliance. And this is like finding your superpower. So if you know your values and then you know your superpower, you're in a really strong place for figuring out how you can best serve the world. And that's one of my values. So we're taking you on this journey to help you really reflect on who you are and who you want to be in the world, and how that shows up for you at work. So thank you all for being here. I look forward to more comments in the replays as well. Share at the end, drop us a line in the Facebook group. We're all here for you, and have a lovely, lovely rest of the day. Massive thank you to Polly as well for being my host today. Any closing words from you?
No, it's been absolutely fantastic, but I am like you, I'm looking forward to the feedback and everything that people bring forward. And just remember that, you know, we're all here for you, and we will create space for you to get the transformation that you need.
Lovely. Thanks, Polly. Take care, everyone. Bye. Bye.